Penguin Pippu's journey.
On a tiny piece of ice, a little penguin named Pippu sleeps in his pajamas. The sunlight is warm, the sea is calm, and for a moment, the world feels peaceful. Pippu opens his eyes. He sits up, blinking in the light, looking left, right behind him, but no one is there. He takes off his pajamas. Still nothing. He waits for a moment. Still nothing. So he decides to dive to look for his friends. Beneath the surface, the water glows faintly green. He swims far and wide, past drifting ice and shadows of fish, but there is no voice calling back to him. When he returns, he finds his small piece of ice thinner than before. A tiny hole has formed in the middle. He looks at it, and tears fall into the water below. Then something drifts near, a plastic bottle, spinning gently in the waves. Pippu tilts his head, curious. At first, he just watches the strange thing drift closer. He steps carefully to the edge of his ice, stretching out one small flipper, and finally lifts it onto his ice. He sits beside it quietly, watching the light move across its surface. Even as the sky burns with orange light, he stays, still beside the bottle. When darkness comes, Pippu slips back into his pajamas and lies down, using the bottle as a pillow, afraid it might drift away while he sleeps. Then snow begins to fall, soft, silent, the first snow in a long, long time. He closes his eyes. Maybe the air is getting colder. Maybe the ice will stop melting tomorrow. And there, under the quiet snow, Pippu finally falls asleep.
Morning comes. Pippu opens his eyes. Beside him lies the plastic bottle he used as a pillow. It's still there, still with him. He looks out toward the horizon. He picks up the bottle, holds it close, and slides into the water. Silver fish scatter like sparks around him. Then one small fish swims straight into the bottle. Pippu freezes, watching, their eyes meeting through the clear wall. He doesn't know what to do. He returns to his ice, places the bottle carefully, and sits for a long time, just watching. Between them, silence. Between them, something gentle. Night falls again. Then, a glow begins inside the bottle. Soft blue, trembling light. The fish is shining. Pippu stares in awe, his eyes wide with wonder. For the first time in a long, long while, the night doesn't feel empty. Far away, beyond the waves, shadows begin to move. Other penguins, drawn by the light, swim closer, calling softly through the dark. One by one, they climb onto the glowing ice. Their voices fill the air, their feathers shimmer in the glow. Pippu smiles. He looks down at the bottle, and inside, the little fish still shines. He lifts it gently, tilts it toward the sea, and lets the fish swim free, its light drifting into the dark water. Around them, the snow keeps falling, soft and endless, and on that frozen sea, Pippu and his friends sleep together, under a sky that finally feels alive again. Pippu looks around, and he notices just how many friends are nearby. A wave of joy rises inside him, too big to keep still. He starts tapping his feet. The rhythm catches on. Soon every penguin is singing, their voices echoing over the sea. Laughter melts the cold. They jump, twirl, and dive together. And in one perfect moment of joy, Pippu leaps higher than ever before. On a quiet day in the cold blue sea, Pippu the penguin woke up and thought, I don't want to do anything today. Not swim, not slide, not even eat. So he didn't. He just sat there, staring at the still water. Other penguins in the far swim and play, but Pippu just sat there, staring at the still water. The sea was calm, the wind was soft, and for once, nothing asked him to hurry. Then, from the deep below, a huge shadow began to rise. An orca, the great hunter of the sea. It swam closer and closer until it stopped right beside Pippu's ice. The orca stared. Pippu stared back. Neither moved. From above, a seagull shouted, "Hey, run, he's going to eat you." But Pippu didn't move. He didn't even blink. The orca opened its mouth wide, a dark cave of teeth and sea foam. And right at that moment, Pippu also opened his mouth, not to scream, not to fight, but to yawn, a big, slow, sleepy yawn. The orca froze. His jaw trembled. He slowly closed his mouth again, unsure what just happened. After a long, awkward silence, he turned around and quietly swam away. Pippu blinked once, then went back to doing absolutely nothing. Pippu came from the next iceberg to visit Pippu. Pippu told him about the strange thing he found while drifting alone on his melting ice. Pippu looked at the floating thing from every side. Then he began his own story.
Near my home,
He said,
there are tall creatures who walk on two legs like us. They live in big square caves beside the sea. One day I saw things like this floating near them. Many penguins were swimming close by. Then those creatures came, riding on huge black ice that smelled strange, and they took all the floating things away.
Pippu's story made Pippu curious. The two friends stared toward the far horizon, wondering what made those strange creatures so eager to take the floating things away. Today again, Pippu danced and played with his friends, laughing until his little feet ached. When the fun was over, he felt sleepy and laid down for a nap. But while dreaming, his foot kicked something away, the little plastic bottle, his precious floating thing. When Pippu woke up, he stretched and smiled. Ah, that was a good nap. Then he noticed something was missing. He looked left, right, all around the ice, but the bottle was gone. A small ache filled his chest. He leaned over the edge to ask the fish below, and just then, the bottle bobbed up in the water, catching the sunlight. Pippu's eyes sparkled. His precious floating thing had come back. He smiled, deeply, quietly, but somewhere inside, he wondered why he loved it so much. Pippu was having another happy day, playing with his precious floating thing. Then from far away, his big brother Happu arrived. Pippu proudly showed his treasure, but in a blink, Happu slipped and sat right on it. Crack! The bottle bent and flattened. Pippu's heart sank. Happu bowed his head, saying sorry. Pippu took a breath and softly said,
"It's okay."
When Happu left, Pippu sat alone, holding his crushed precious thing. The ice was quiet, and Pippu just stared, wondering what to do next. Pippu tried everything to fix his broken plastic bottle, his precious floating thing, but nothing worked. Tired and sad, Pippu sat on the ice for a long time. Then he remembered something Pippu once said about seeing many floating things, just like his, far away near his home. Maybe he could fix it there. So Pippu carefully wrapped his precious thing in a small bag and made up his mind to go. His penguin friends, even the seagulls, tried to stop him, but with one last wave, Pippu set off alone toward Pippu's home and the place where the floating things come from. Pippu leapt from one ice piece to another,
Oops, the other way.
swimming through the cold water in between. He had come far already, but the next iceberg was too distant to reach by swimming. He paused, unsure, when suddenly the sea grew darker beneath him. An orca rose from the deep ocean. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then the orca opened its mouth, its voice deep and calm. "You're that penguin," it said, "the one who did nothing. Do you remember?" Pippu nodded.
Yes, I remember.
They stayed there in silence, and somehow they understood each other. Pippu explained he was on his way to visit a friend beyond the great iceberg. The orca then said, "Then I'll take you there." So with gentle strength, the orca began to push Pippu's tiny ice forward, cutting through the great blue sea. With the orca's help, Pippu's small piece of ice glided swiftly across the wide sea, toward the place Pippu had once spoken of, where many floating things gathered near strange caves, built by the two-legged creatures. As the shapes grew clearer in the distance, Pippu turned to the orca and said softly,
Thank you for bringing me this far.
He hesitated, then asked,
But why didn't you eat me that day?
The orca was silent for a moment, then spoke in a low, deep voice.
I remember that day. You sat alone on a melting piece of ice, your world shrinking, but you didn't panic or yell. You simply watched the floating thing and listened to the silver fish. When I rose before you, you didn't run or scream. You were calm, so calm that I felt no one should ever break that peace. And I didn't want to be the one who did.
Pippu didn't understand every word, but something warm stirred in his heart. He nodded quietly, and with a small wave, set off once more toward Pippu's home and the place where the floating things are born. At last, Pippu reached the place his friend Pippu had spoken of. When they saw each other, they held flippers and kept jumping, laughing like the ice itself was singing. But then Pippu stopped. He opened his small bag and carefully took out his broken floating thing. Pippu gasped softly, then reached out as if to comfort him. After a quiet pause, Pippu asked,
Do you think those two-legged creatures you once mentioned could fix it?
Pippu looked toward the distant shore, where metal and light shimmered faintly in the cold air.
They live over there.
He said gently.
They won't hurt us. They mostly just watch.
He smiled at Pippu and added,
But it's getting late. Let's rest a night and go find them tomorrow.
The next morning, Pippu and Pippu packed their small bags and set off toward the land of the two-legged creatures. They swam side by side to the cold blue water until the ice turned to steel and snow. Holding flippers tightly, they walked bravely between tall, silent buildings. Then a shadow moved. A tall creature appeared, surprised, but smiling. He bent down and waved, and soon Pippu and Pippu were dancing with him, their feet tapping softly on the frozen ground. Then Pippu remembered. He opened his bag and showed the creature his broken floating thing. The creature spoke gently, words they couldn't understand, but his voice was warm and they trusted him. As they followed him inside, he called out with joy,
Look! We have visitors! They're helping us clean the sea!
Pippu and Pippu followed the two-legged creature to a large yellow cave. Just as Pippu stepped forward, the door slid shut right before his beak. Through a window, the penguins watched. Inside, another creature appeared. He placed Pippu's floating thing carefully beside him and said something neither Pippu nor Pippu could understand before closing the window. The penguins pressed close to the glass. Inside were stacks of things they had never seen, and in one corner, many floating things just like Pippu's, piled neatly, his resting on the very top. Pippu whispered,
Maybe we should wait. They might fix it and bring it back.
but Pippu didn't answer. He turned and began to walk away, his thoughts drifting somewhere the wind could not reach. Back on Pippu's ice, Pippu sat in silence, watching the yellow cave far away.
When I was alone,
He said softly,
on that melting piece of ice, I felt like the floating thing, adrift and forgotten. But it stayed with me, and I wasn't lonely anymore. Because of its light, My friends found me. We danced, we laughed. Now, seeing it with others like it, I don't know if I should take it back.
Pippu turned toward the yellow cave again. Pippu said nothing. He simply stayed beside him. That night, after many quiet talks, Pippu and Pippu fell asleep beneath the dim sky. When morning came, Pippu started to pack. Ready to go? Pippu said,
I think it should stay so it can sing and dance together with its friends.
and Pippu understood, but after a few steps, he stopped. He turned back, handed his bag to Pippu, and swam alone toward the yellow cave. He stood on tiptoe, peeking through the glass. Inside, his floating thing rested among many others, peaceful and still.
Goodbye.
Pippu whispered, his voice barely louder than the wind. As he turned to leave, the sadness in his eyes began to fade, replaced by something that looked a lot like hope. Pippu finally returned to Pippu. Pippu told Pippu what he had seen, how the floating thing was resting comfortably among its friends, and how he wanted to give it proper goodbye. Just as Pippu was about to head home, the orca appeared, rising from the deep. He had been waiting, wanting to take his little friend home safely. And so once more, the orca pushed Pippu's small piece of ice across the sea, carrying him back to the place where his penguin friends lived. When they arrived, the orca swam in one wide arc and disappeared into the blue. Back home, Pippu returned his days, dancing and playing with his friends, sometimes visiting the orca to share quiet moments, sometimes meeting Pippu again and having fun. And when he was alone, Pippu often thought about one friend in particular, knowing it was safe and happy. Pippu felt a quiet happiness of his own. Pippu was happy, whoever he was with, and even when he was with no one at all. Pippu was a happy penguin in every season of his little life.